Welcome to everyone. I am Carlos Mana and I work in the communications office. In the first months of this year, we were all invited to get involved in the work of the Synod that began in 2021 and will end in 2023. We worked in our local churches, in our communities, and in the groups where we belonged. Then we submitted our reflections and proposals to the international team for the Synod. So let us now listen to the members of this committee, after they had summarized all the data they received into a single document, which was then submitted to the Synod Secretariat on behalf of the Focolari movement. Francisco, how is the document organized?
First of all, thanks to everyone who worked on this paper. That was so important. And thank you for all the inputs that have arrived. The summary document that we submitted followed the guidelines provided by the Secretariat itself. First of all, that it should not exceed 10 pages. Then, that they should pay much attention to the participants' lived experiences of the synodal path, adhering closely to the views expressed, even if contradictory to each other, perhaps even conflicting with each other. And finally, it should have been a document that is also mindful of the viewpoints of minorities. The document is divided into three parts: the experience made, we will discuss this later, the summary of the contents citing the source of each, and a third chapter that includes all that came from the zones as a perspective, as issues to be dealt with in the future, looking toward the future.
Let's now go to Spain and meet Loli Garcia. Loli, can you tell us how you have worked and about the participation of the members of the Focolari movement around the world?
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Carlos, for the question. As you may know, we were all asked to give our input as a movement. By the end of April, we'd received the responses from the zones, the reflections, and all the work that had been done in this process by 15,000 members of our family. So how did we do all this work with all this rich material? At first, we did a personal reading, and we reflected in our respective geographical areas. Secondly, we read again and again. We reflected, we might say, in a cross-sectional manner, according to the different themes. And lastly, we tried to place the inputs into the framework that was proposed to us by the Synod Secretariat. It wasn't a summary of the inputs. There was a request to proceed and to make space for community discernment. We all made the journey on two levels. On one part as a local church, and as members of the Focolari, we immersed ourselves in the local church, parishes, diocesan councils, involving our brothers and sisters from other churches, and working with different movements. But we also made our journey within the Focolari family. And the result is the document that now we want to present to you.
Liliane Mugombozi is in Yaoundé, Cameroon. What were the ups and downs of this experience?
Hello, everyone. Hello, Carlos. For many, it was the beginning of a new journey that needs to continue. They also talked about a second assembly, because it gives us opportunities to reflect on the life of the movement. For example, in Brazil, they called it a path with responsibility and joy. From East Africa, they added that it was an opportunity to make an examination of conscience on our lifestyle. They write from the Southern Cone region, we had opportunities to stop, to pause, rethink, and creatively give an updated and faithful response to the gospel. Furthermore, from Eastern Europe, they wrote, the Synod was a discovery, a gift too, because primarily it was good for us to talk about the various proposed themes. From West Central Africa, they said, we realized that walking together also means making our own the good choices of our fellow travelers.
Now we will meet with Claudio Guerrieri, who is in Rome, Italy. Claudio, can you tell us what discernment was done on the first core theme, path and mission?
Hello everyone, and thank you. It seems to me that you will have a very rich text before you. For us to journey together is to live the spirituality of communion, feeling part of humanity on a journey in which fellow travelers can be anyone, with whoever we share a stretch of the road. So the text comes from all the contributions, as we all want to have an inclusive, supportive experience. We want to experience ourselves as a variegated people open to all. But shadows also emerge. That is, it is not always easy. We live the same contradictions that our time experiences. The contradictions come from the distinctions, the friends of our time, the social or cultural inequalities. Then, according to the geographical access, we may say, there is one element or another of difficulty. The challenge is to be mindful of the needs of those who are close to us, to encourage ourselves in implementing, in carrying out a dialogue, and to do so especially with those who do not think like us. This seems to be the biggest challenge that has surfaced. If the journey is significant, if the shared paths between communities and movements are significant, for example, in the case of the experience of Together for Europe, or the various initiatives that the Movement for Unity in Politics has carried out, whether in Europe or in Brazil or in the Southern Cone, we realize, however, that the analysis made surfaced the fact that we still tend to exclude some people because they have a certain sexual orientation, or because they are simple-minded, maybe uneducated people, or perhaps with disorders or even mental illnesses. In short, we still have a long way to go in the aspect of inclusion. We also realize that in some places there is a strong discrimination in terms of social status concerning women. In short, taking care of community life on the one hand and living the mission on the other is a challenge for everyone. One of the issues that emerged is that sometimes we deal with issues affecting communities in a bureaucratic manner, and often our initiatives are not well coordinated or are spontaneous, and maybe they are carried out individually. This complicates the issues and actions because young people and those who are new to our communities do not get actively involved. In short, we also experience the tendency to privatize religious life and spirituality. So we need, there is still a desire to understand how we can be more open in interpersonal relationships. For example, in Brazil, they said, by focusing precisely on those who have no affiliation with us. Still from Brazil, an interesting input came from people of non-religious beliefs. For me, this seems an important element because it shows that the Synod, our synodal experience, has also touched groups, let's say, that sometimes are not well inserted in the structure of the local communities. Here is what a dialogue group of people of non-religious beliefs in Brazil has written. There is a need for greater openness to welcome everyone that will open to the possibility of the changes necessary for everyone to feel like family. And for those with religious beliefs to recognize ever more that people with other beliefs are also heirs of the testament of Jesus. They concluded, just as we seek to recognize the identity of others, so we would desire that our own be recognized. In other words, there is a growing need to go out and not to be comfortable just among ourselves. We feel the need for a profound spiritual and human formation to expand our hearts and overcome set patterns. This idea is very much felt in the Middle East. Sometimes we still have to make an effort to change our language so we can include and dialogue with those who come from different backgrounds, different perspectives. Along this line, there is also the need for a more focused effort on the ecumenical and interreligious dialogues, which are also our specific actions.
Let's now go to Bari, also in Italy, to meet with Vincenzo Di Pilato. Regarding the Word and the Eucharist, which is the second thematic group, what can you share with us?
Hello everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to share with you what has been happening during this period. To begin with, this core theme recalls the Word and the Eucharist, and of course life. This theme dealt with an unexpected event which we all experienced and suffered. This was the pandemic that forced us to stop and give more value to prayer. And so the so-called online prayers were faithfully carried out by so many of us throughout the world. Many recalled the invitation to live the three communions, which someone defined as letting the Word live in us, receiving the Eucharist to be more like Jesus, and communicating with our brothers and sisters so that mutual love grows. However, for some, listening to God's Word and the communion of experiences is sometimes reduced to a personal rant, looking for quick solutions to problems that arise in daily life. This superficial attitude requires others to listen more attentively, be free from the worry of giving immediate answers, and participate in the experience with empathy and loving kindness. Frequent participation in the Eucharist has inspired concrete daily gestures of love, although it doesn't always turn out to be attractive from the aspect of the celebration itself. For example, some texts are read but not understood. Some people emphasize that homilies at times do not help to understand the text. There are lay people who are insufficiently trained in biblical and theological matters. In communities where there are brothers and sisters from other churches, praying more together sometimes appears too Catholic. Instead, what turns out to be more useful is a sharing of life that flows from the Word of God and the mutual sharing of experiences. For example, in various countries in Africa, radio programs are organised monthly with the reading of the Word of Life for the month and the sharing of life experiences. From Asia, they were concerned to ensure that meetings are not stereotyped. The practice of living and sharing experiences on God's Word is viewed as a powerful means of evangelization. In India, there's a felt need to improve the way meetings are organised. Those who identify themselves in the context of an Asian culture are unhappy with the limitation that enforces them to keep quiet and not talk about difficulties right away. There is the need to use public meeting spaces rather than places of worship, for example, to enhance the participation of young people. The Philippine community suggests adopting a more synodal style for meetings. In Brazil, there is a felt desire to continually return also to the practice of writing, sharing and narrating experiences as the fruit of the word lived, with the aid of technology and social media.
Let's now move to Argentina, to Buenos Aires, with Pablo Blanco. The importance of listening emerges from the document. What do our communities say about this?
Thank you for the question, Carlos. Hello, everyone. And also thanks to God for this beautiful experience of universal brotherhood. Indeed, listening is learned by listening. We know it, but we are aware that we need to improve. Often our communication style is threatened by individualism. A deep and authentic dialogue starts by putting the other person in the first place. We discovered multiple obstacles to listening and dialogue, namely the culture of suspicion, superficiality in relationships, stopping at appearances, forgetting the other person's psychological condition, prejudices, too much attention to results and not to the person, a frantic pace, ready-made response, not knowing how to give up one's initial opinion, closed minds, fundamentalism, clericalism, being defensive of one's beliefs, lack of mercy, respect, caring, welcoming, paresia, humility, courage, clarity, empathy, silence, availability, and esteem. But when we experience being a family of families, we feel that we progress in our faith. Each one feels free to give his life for his brothers and sisters, to carry each other's burdens or joys. However, it is necessary to first establish an atmosphere of kindness, and only then to gently intervene to complement and/or correct. Sometimes, for fear of being indelicate, the paresia is replaced with false prudence. We are aware of this. We feel called to a purification that requires a mode of relationship that is more authentic, transparent, and without hypocrisy. At times, we respectfully listen to the other person's point of view, acknowledge and accept it, but then we do not modify our actions or decisions. We are learning to express our thoughts openly. We are not used to contradicting another's idea, being open to criticism, and talking more openly about ethical issues, gender issues, etc. Listening is learned by listening.
Let's go back to Italy now, to Tuscany. And here we are with Eva Gullo. Eva, in the summary document there are several important words: discernment, authority, forming oneself in dialogue, and encountering others by rediscovering one's identity. What did you convey to the Synod Secretariat regarding these issues?
Thank you, Carlos. I also join you in thanking and greeting everybody for this extraordinary experience that we had of consultation within the bigger consultation that took place, and which is going on until the end of the first phase, though with important words and issues offered, such as the ones you mentioned, community discernment, for example, which has brought in different perspectives. A model of the pyramid still exists culturally, but there's a noticeable move towards synodality, step by step. There's a strong call to involve everyone and to live participatory leadership. There were also comments on decision-making processes, and here the desire and wish emerged that they should be the result of the life of communion among everyone. At times they're complex due to lack of clarity. The risk sometimes is that the strongest or the group of people with the most influence can give guidelines that are not fully shared by everyone, and often they don't take into consideration different opinions. But this was coupled with the desire to enhance the consultation processes. As you'll read in the document, there was also a part regarding the exercise of authority and the experience of fraternity. In recent years, both in the movement and also in the Church, there's a change in understanding the exercise of authority, and we too are within this reflection. There are different viewpoints on how authority is exercised, also based on what's experienced in the Church, specifically in the local areas. Here, what we can see is, for example, an increasingly less authoritarian way. And what prevails is co-responsibility, walking together, teamwork, humility, learning from mistakes, and also knowing how to delegate. But we also experience a tension between two attitudes that exist because of challenges related to ecclesiastical or religious authority. Here, we refer a bit to the impact of scandals that were caused by the abuse by some members of the clergy. The 2 points are, on the one hand, the abuse of authority, and on the other hand, we gathered from the consultation, also the disregard for authority. There is also great respect for the hierarchy, and often the decisions made by a few leaders who were usually the elders, older in terms of age or rank, and this is a very delicate matter. And this is seen especially in some areas, and sometimes with little consultation, it generates uneasiness among young people who instead think and would like to experience this aspect differently. One's own native culture is often not conducive to the sincerity needed for community discernment. There's a sense of a journey we have to take, but we feel that all of us need to experience it. In local communities, getting more involved in common projects with all the generations is something vibrant, and it produces inclusion and especially intergenerationality. Engaging young people ever more shows that in the geographical structures of the Church, this brings and sustains trust. But above all, one feels the trust from the part of the adults. An important element noted is the need for formation of leaders. This is done through processes of hands-on formation and attention to issues such as communication, delegation, accompaniment, thus giving more trust and shared responsibility to everyone according to their specific task. Then you also mentioned the contact point with others to rediscover our identity, our own identity. And this too was something that we gathered from the consultation. And we have experiences of collaboration, dialogue with people of all beliefs and convictions, talks and meetings on interreligious dialogue with Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, dialogues with other churches and also with other religious groups, mostly through experiences and social activities. For example, Laudato Si, Living Peace, Dialogue in Politics, and the Karolubik Center for Dialogue. These are just a few of them. We feel the need to grow in sharing even our weaknesses, giving ourselves wholeheartedly to address concrete issues of daily life, which we know are difficult in today's context, such as the sensitive issues of abuse, of political violence, hatred, racial issues, gender issues. Here are some examples. The Economy of Communion project, especially in the business parks, like the Leonello Business Park in Loppiano, Italy, or those in Brazil and Argentina, but also the fruitful cultural dialogue at the university level in Cameroon, precisely on the topic of the economy of communion. These are valuable channels of dialogue and encounter with society, which were also unexpected, and they're very fruitful. Another topic lies in a different keyword, formation for dialogue. Here we understood, we realized that although there are so many formation programs in place, we still fail to adequately promote what we have. And as I said, we have many of them. What came out is the need to develop a plan for a formation towards a well-enculturated dialogue, which could also be precisely the tool that allows us to know and appreciate what's good in every culture and to value it, embracing diversity evermore in its concrete aspects. We also discovered the need to value every community that seeks to respond to the sufferings of their societies with creativity, generativity, and courage, through social work and different activities, for instance, to help children, single mothers, youth, refugees, internally displaced people. In short, by participating in all the important moments of people's lives in an authentic dialogue of life.
Thank you, Eva. In Hong Kong, we have Vania Cheng. We shall now watch the slide presentation of the different perspectives. Can you tell us what impressed you the most?
Hello everyone, and thank you, Carlos. The following are the four perspectives that we highlighted at the end of the summary that you are reading. 1. Dialogue in the Church and society. 2. Networking with other ecclesial and social realities in response to the cry of humanity. 3. Participation of all and shared responsibility. 4. Changing our outlook on young people and relating with them. I was particularly impressed by the last 2 points. The request of many in the movement is to grow in parousia, in communion and transparency, in communication, a commitment to extend participation to all, to be clear about how authority is exercised in the community, and to find ways of exercising leadership in a participatory manner. All of these coincide with the needs expressed in the responses gathered from young people during the consultation. Now I would like to quote from them directly, so that we can have a sharper focus as we move forward in the synodal journey together. As young people, what do we think should change in the community? Attitude. There must always be open listening, making space for the other person regardless of one's own opinion. We believe that parousia, speaking the truth about what one thinks with full confidence, is fundamental. What should be maintained instead? Experience, because it strengthens trust among us without feeling judged. The word is embodied in daily life and is not something theoretical. We all feel like brothers and sisters, learning from one another, and we can see that we all build community equally. This comes from the youth in Western Europe. Be more open to prayer spaces, be understanding and open to suggestions or feedback from people of other faiths. Accept what they offer or share and don't turn against them or think badly about them. As a church, we have become too ritualistic and closed. We should be more open and welcoming. This is from the youth of India. It seems to me that what they said was a synthesis of syntheses, of perspectives.
Thank you, Vanya. Francisco, how does this adventure of the synodal process continue in the movement?
Now we are in the continental stage, and so all of us are engaged in our local churches for whatever the church asks of us in this regard. The work that we have done so far is very useful for ourselves, for the whole movement, and for the entire Focolare movement. We are already working on many of the key words that have emerged, which we now see in this word cloud. Listening, dialogue, parousia, decision-making, leadership, formation in leadership, living the word, then going out, missionary outreach, and youth. It is a journey that we have to continue in our local communities and in every area of the movement. The meeting between the delegates, the leaders of the Focolare movement in the zones, and the General Council last month is proof of the journey that we have all begun, and that we should continue with a great spiritual and concrete commitment to dialogue among ourselves. So, once again, thank you for all that you have done in this synodal journey. A special thanks goes to the synodal team that will continue to accompany us. See you next time. Greetings to all. Bye-bye.
Thanks to everyone. The document containing the proposals, the Focolari movement's contribution to the Synod Secretariat, is available on Hindi, translated into several languages. Goodbye.